Today, we've been talking a lot about green policies, and next up, we have got the leader of the Green Party in England and Wales, Zack Polanski. He was elected last month in a landslide amongst party members off the back of a campaign that urged a more punchy, populist approach to green matters and other issues. And he has seen a surge in support, with Green membership increasing rapidly since he took over. This morning, the Greens say they have overtaken the Conservative Party when it comes to membership. Zack Polanski, hello. Good morning to you.
Thanks for having me.
I'm sure you are on a high after this reported surge in the Green membership. What do you think it's down to?
It's really exciting. We've had an 80% increase in the entire membership since I became leader, and people are telling me what it's down to. People are feeling hope. They can hear that I'm talking about the fact that people's wages aren't high enough, the cost of living is too high, and actually what we really need to do is tackle the inequality at the heart of our society. The 4 wealthiest people in Britain own more wealth than 20 million people combined. And the Green Party are the only party really talking about the fact that people are really struggling, they're tired and exhausted, and it doesn't have to be this way.
Right. You said in your conference speech you want to focus on the inequality by taxing the super rich. You don't want to tax people like hairdressers or plumbers. Yet you do want to raise £90 billion over 5 years from a carbon tax, taxes on businesses to encourage them to become greener. Businesses will just pass those costs on to their customers, won't they, hitting those hairdressers and plumbers?
Well, I think there's a few things here. You've spent the programme talking about energy bills, and that's really, really important. Ed Miliband talked earlier about the decoupling. That's something the government could and should do. And actually, the reason
I'm asking about your carbon tax.
No, but the reason
why... Do you accept that businesses will pass the cost on to consumers?
Well, that's why, with energy, for instance, we need to look at nationalising the energy companies. And the reason why I'm saying this is because all of these things for businesses will make their costs cheaper if their energy bills are down. Those are one of the biggest kind of hits on businesses at the moment.
Sure. But are you saying you don't expect them to pass your massive carbon tax on to customers?
No. So I think what we need to be doing is finding other ways to support particularly small and local businesses. These are vital, by the way, for tackling the climate crisis. We know the big corporations are destroying our environment, our democracy and our communities. And actually what we need is that much more local businesses, those small to medium-sized businesses that actually can be rooted in communities, that are doing things for the public good. They can make a profit, sure, but this isn't about squeezing out every single profit they can make. And that's going on far too often with far too many huge businesses.
OK. So you're not accepting that carbon tax would end up being a burden on plumbers, hairdressers and most average households?
No, and we've been having this conversation. We've been having this conversation for decades because of the cost of inaction. I just wanted to be clear.
Sure. Yeah, sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you. I just want it to be clear.
Totally fine.
Now, one of your signature policies that wouldn't hit most people is a wealth tax, an annual tax on people's assets above 10 million. Can you tell our audience how much you think that would raise a year?
So the estimates that have come out from the TUC and a group called Patriotic Millionaires, who are a group of millionaires saying taxes more, look between 15 to 25 billion pounds a year. OK. Wealth taxes, as you know, have been tried in many other European countries similar to the UK. Spain has a wealth tax, which is quite similar to your proposal. Do you happen to know how much they raised in a year from their wealth tax? No, I don't, but I'm hoping you can tell me.
Yeah, no, it's not a trick question. It's just interesting. It's about €3 billion, which is about £2.5 billion. That's in Spain. That is such a long way from your 15 to 25 billion a year. Well,
I think it's about getting the thresholds right and making sure it's done right. So
the Spain one is similar to your proposal.
Sure, but we're a different country. So we have the City of London for a start. There's an incredible amount of wealth in the City of London. So I think it's about making sure we're comparing apples and apples rather than apples and oranges. OK. I mean, I've got a few more countries, if it helps.
Sure. Switzerland raised €9.5 billion from their wealth tax in 2023. Norway, €2.7 billion. They're just sums that are way down from what you're suggesting you could raise. And we've got Paul Johnson in March this year, formerly of the Institute for Fiscal Studies. No country in the world has ever successfully had a wealth tax that raised serious money. That's what I'm questioning.
And I think they're legitimate questions. I'd also say those aren't tiny amounts of money. So actually, whatever you're going to create from a wealth tax is ultimately about reducing inequality. This isn't about creating public investment. We can do that anyway. We don't need to tax the wealthy to do that. This is ultimately about tackling the deep inequality in our society. In terms of Paul Johnson and the IFS, they very much look to protect and maintain the status quo. And what I would say is the status quo, the economy is not working for almost anyone at the moment, unless you're in that top 1%
Right. Don't you
of the
accept
wealthiest.
the IFS are independent?
They are independent, but there's been reports just last week around their connection with Barclays and some of the things that they've been saying. I think it's legitimate to question economists, no matter where they come from.
Sure, yeah, that's interesting. They say they are independent.
Sure.
You want to spend a lot more on public services and welfare. I wonder if the wealth tax, you present it as a panacea when it's probably not. Is that fair?
No, I don't present it as a panacea at all. In fact, I don't even think it's close to a panacea. That's just the start of the things we need to do. We need to bring capital gains tax in line with income tax. And the reason why that's important, right now, if you're a cleaner, you could be paying more tax than the person who owns the building that you're cleaning. We need to tax earned income as much as we tax unearned wealth. Sorry, the other way around. We need to tax unearned wealth as much as we tax earned income.
Right. I'm just wondering if you look at countries around Europe who spend more than we do on public services and have better public services as a result, they tend to tax the income of everyone in order to get those excellent public services, including lower and middle income earners. And maybe you just have to say to people, we're all going to have to pay for this.
We'll absolutely say that. I think at the moment we're in at the moment, people are really, really struggling. And so I think it's right that the focus is on the super wealthy. I think once we start to move to a better footing as a society where we have better public infrastructure and services, then I think it is legitimate to say paying tax is something that's actually patriotic. We should be proud of contributing to this country, to making sure we have an NHS that works, that we have public transport that works. And yes, everyone will have to pay for that. But ultimately, this is about where is the biggest burden, and that should be on the people with the broadest shoulders.
We've got the former head of NATO here in the studio this morning, Jens Stoltenberg. Tensions with Russia are back in the news as Donald Trump tries to resolve the war in Ukraine. I wanted to ask about the Greens' position on NATO, if I may. Do you want the UK to withdraw from NATO?
Not immediately. The world is in political turmoil and we need to make sure our country is defended.
Right.
However, we've got Donald Trump in the White House. I would say that America has always been a problem in regards to NATO and American imperialism. But in Donald Trump, we have a man who Mark Rutte, the current head of NATO, says we should call him daddy, despite the fact he talks about turning Gaza into a luxury Riviera.
Well, he doesn't anymore, does he? I just want to come back to the beginning of your answer here, because you said not immediately,
right,
which suggests that at some point you want the UK to pull out of NATO.
Well, what I want right now is conversations with our European neighbours, because I think Brexit was one of the most catastrophic decisions we ever made, economically and for security.
But I think you've just told us this morning, ultimately you want the UK to pull out of NATO. Is that fair?
Once we've created an alternative alliance with our European neighbours, we should absolutely be looking at a different way that is focused on peace and diplomacy rather than on nuclear weapons. OK,
so let me ask you then, if one of our European allies was attacked by Russia and they invoked Article 5 of the NATO treaty, which says we must defend them, would you support the UK defending one of our European allies?
Well, we clearly have to, because we're in NATO, but this is part of the point. The Intelligence Council just last week wanted to release a report. The Guardian reported that it was sat on by the government because they weren't ready to deal with the consequences. What were the consequences? They said that the biggest security threat this country is facing right now is food insecurity and also looking at global pandemics. I think we need to be making sure that we're spending money on the actual climate crisis and food insecurity rather than £15 billion on nuclear weapons at the same time that our NHS is crumbling.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Zack Polanski, Green Party leader in England and Wales. Thank you for your time. Thank you. OK, well, let's ask our panel what they think about the surge in Green membership. Adil, Zack Polanski has only been leader of the Greens for just over a month. What do you... I mean, he's definitely making headlines. What do you put his appeal down to?
Well, I think Zack has admitted himself he's enjoying this sort of populist stance that he's taking, you know, and I think there's a lot of sort of moral arguments that he seems to be winning with a lot of people. And I think he's been allowed to do that because there's been a vacuum from the major parties. If you look at something like Gaza, for example, and Gaza, in many ways, it is the litmus test for our morality in the whole world at the moment. And he's very, very clear on that. Migration, he put out a video the other day, very positive stance on migration about all, and the list, it was a poem by Benjamin Zephaniah, and the list of nationalities he listed in that video. It's something we've not seen, even from Labour, who have been traditionally pro-migration. So he's sort of finding a space here, which I think is seeming quite popular.
He's definitely got the TikTok economy, that is for sure.